shoot this episode. Hi, my name is Joseph Rogers, and with me I have Darrin Chase. And we just did a series of mics and shows the last 3 days to celebrate your 10-year comedy anniversary. Woo! So congratulations to that.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate having me. It's kind of back to where I started. Started across the water at the Comedy Underground 10 years ago today.
Nice. What made you want to pursue comedy at the Underground?
I would say that was the only comedy club I knew in the area, and I was going there to watch the open mic every week.
Mm-hmm.
I would pay $5 and sit in the audience and watch the pros, watch the new guys, and kind of see, I can probably do this. And I kept telling the door guy that I was working on my 3 minutes. I'm going to sign up one day, and he kind of just kept saying, okay, sure. Yeah, all right, then do it. And finally what got me to start specifically on this day was I was flat broke, and I couldn't get in to watch the open mic. And this would have been September 3rd. I went down to try to get into the club, asked somebody for $5, and before I could ask them for $5, they asked if I was signing up for the open mic, and I said, do I get it for free if I sign up? And they said,
Nice.
yeah. And I go, well, then I guess I'm signing up.
Yes.
And I signed up that night, and the Comedy Underground had a bump list where if you didn't get, you weren't one of the first 35 people, you for sure got to go up the next week. So I didn't get on the list to go up, but I was on the bump list, which meant September 10th was my first day of comedy. So I spent that week leading up to that day going, that's the day I'm starting. That's the day my comedy career begins. And I went so far as to change my occupation on Facebook to comedian around 3 in the afternoon before I even did an open mic. But that's how it started.
Hey man, sometimes just believing in yourself is the key, I know it drives a lot of people crazy when people change their status to stand-up comedian right out the gate.
It drove me crazy when I saw the memory. I was like, I did what? I didn't know that until years later.
Yeah, you can't undo that.
No, it's there. And I said,
But as long as you stick with it and you grind away, I don't see anything wrong with it.
I mean, yeah, and that's what I did. I jumped in feet first. I had the luxury though up front. I didn't have a real job when I started. I had worked at a dispensary, and I ended up as a weed delivery guy.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's what you were doing when I first met you.
Yeah,
a long time ago in Bremerton.
Yep, I was delivering to stores. I was delivering to people. I was selling
way before weed was legal.
mics. Yeah, it was right in that transition. It was a really interesting time to be doing that Wild West. I got pulled over. Cops found 5 ounces of weed in my car. They took it, and then they gave it back to me because I still fell within the medical. I could have a pound.
Fuck yeah.
And because things were legal, I could legally give weed away to adults, but I wasn't selling it. It was for donations, as it goes. But so I had a lot of free time in my early days of stand-up because I, lived almost like a full-time comedian from day one, and then just tried to do as many mics. I was at mics every night, and it was because of the weed delivery that helped me be there, because that's where you're making money. So it really, one helped the other stay stronger. And then by 2014, I went down to LA. Just really wanted to see what real comedy was like, and I got bit by that bug and moved down there. And the Comedy Store kept the dream alive and kept me seeing what could be and what.
It's important, I think, in comedy to have those moments in time that kind of remind you of why you're doing it and where the potential lies. Doing open mics locally at dive bars or whatever, it's different than actually going to the club and getting that feel of that club vibe. You
see what professionals go through, and you see I popped into the Comedy Cellar in New York just to watch a show, and you see headlining comedians that you respect that you would think aren't taking notes from people that the club manager is saying, don't perform in that shirt, change, no, unbutton, okay, good. And they're getting notes to that degree because it's a professional environment. And I learned at the Comedy Store that first day I was there, when I was still just living in Seattle and visiting there, how cutthroat and cold-hearted and impersonal stand-up comedy could be. For no reason other than this guy has more credits. I was backstage at one of the big shows, and Dion Cole drops in, and this is 2014. He's gotten bigger since then, but he had a name behind him, and they said, we want to put him on the show, and the host goes, okay, put him on the show. They go, well, we have to take someone. He looks at the list, goes, him, off. Without even reading the name, him. There's no one on this list that has the credit, and you've seen it had nothing to do with the person. So that person got bumped from the show, but they can't go, it's because I suck. So no, because this guy has more credits. Yeah. So you can always have something to strive for, and you see just the different balance. And it made me come back to a place like Seattle and appreciate smaller crowds and, just understand that, no one's entitled to any show or any audience, or a bigger name wants to go up to that crowd, they're going to do it. And there's nothing, they might do 2 hours, and the club might be closed by the time you're supposed to go up, and that's just how comedy works in those big dog-eat-dog worlds. And, when you see things like, Seattle, they kind of had more of a vulnerable kind of coddly kind of, keep it safe and nice and comfortable for new people kind of a thing, which is good. It's nothing wrong with that. But also, when you see what happens when you're just jumping into the sharks, and how that can make different kind of comedy. And
well, I think in comedy, a lot of people, because it's one person on stage, I think it's very common to have the field be very every man for themselves or every woman for themselves type mentality, you know, and because you want to do what's best for you. You want to grow because you should be focusing on yourself, but at the same time, it's like it is a team thing. We're all in this together. All the comedians that work together, we're all in the same struggle, and that is to get on that stage and to tell jokes. And some places are a little bit more cliquey, some places are a little bit more cold when it comes to communicating with other people, and other places are pretty open and friendly, and I love that. I've never had a mic where people got bumped, and I take a lot of pride in that.
Sure.
And I got frustrated by getting bumped myself at other mics that would take hours to go to.
But now if Bill Burr is walking down the street and says, hey, that's a hot crowd, you mind if I pop in and close out the show real quick? Are you going to tell those 5 open micers, hey man, I was going to have Bill Burr on this show, but you guys are more important?
Oh, hell no.
Right. So in that kind of scenario,
when
you go to LA and those kind of places, like you run into that. Like one of the interesting things, bringing Bill Burr up, and the thing about Seattle, he was talking about alt comedy, and he said that why he didn't really agree with alt comedy, and that kind of that vibe of cultivating a very safe place. And he goes, he goes, they will literally create a comedy womb, and that was the actual name of the alt comedy safe place in Seattle. Unironically, they called it the Comedy Womb. So he kind of
nailed it on accident
to a point where it's like that is what they do.
Yeah.
It's what exactly they did. But yeah, and I mean, and yes, we all are on a team and stuff. But in some places, I've seen a lot of comics where they start in that very safe, everyone's on our side, we're all clapping and cheering for each other kind of thing. And if you don't have an actual audience, or if you're around your friends, then when you get in front of that actual audience, I see them go, guys, it's a comedy show, you're supposed to laugh. Because they're kind of trained like, this is the funny part to my friends. And then, there's those different areas. Some people just want the social environment, and they just want to, they're good writers. Some people, I want to be on the road, I want to travel around, and everyone has their different paths, every kind of comedy. And that's the thing, too, that's almost hard to nail down, is the genres of comedy. Because there is no specific genre, but there is very distinct styles and differentials, and some people fit into certain categories, but a lot of people merge and blend that world. And
well, I will say I've never been to LA, I've never been to New York, I've never been to Vegas or anything like that, so I am a little sheltered when it comes to my experience outside of this area, but yeah, I look forward to the day that one day I get to go check it out, and I wouldn't mind getting bumped, and if there's someone else that was, had more credentials than me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the beauty of someone like yourself that has a family and you're stuck in areas, you get to create the rooms that help the people grow. So when people go to those areas, they're more prepared.
Including myself.
Exactly. Yeah. And that helps with the hosting. And when you have that ability to have your regular room, your weekly spot, your nightly spots where you might have the same audience even. You get to work on that crowd work, you get to work on that conversational element of comedy. You know, they already know who you are, they've already established you, so it really helps you grow a lot faster in that sense. And then you're meeting out-of-town comics and stuff, so when you go to those areas, they know you and they go, hey, let me help you out. So that's a huge advantage as well. But yeah, there is a definite...
I'm definitely grateful that when I started doing comedy in Kitsap, that the market was pretty much wide open for me. And that, you know, I could do these shows and host these shows for practice because, as like you said, I got a family. I can't always be traveling outside of home to go do these things. So the fact that I can put on these shows and we can grind and practice here at home, and it is a smaller area, so some of the crowd is the same. So it does make you change things up instead of doing the same jokes, which is really cool because now I have plenty of jokes to choose from. Sure, maybe they're not all polished, squeaky clean quite yet, but I do have a wide range of things to choose from because I've constantly tried to change it up for the people here locally. Yeah, it's definitely nice having a launch pad like this out here for comics to practice. And now the comics locally, like we were talking about the other day, they've been going out and getting booked on gigs and just getting it in, you know, just crushing it and getting fresh ears and fresh eyes and using all that work to their advantage, and it's really fucking cool to see.
Yeah, getting out of the area and going in front of new audiences is what will strengthen anyone more than anything else.
Yep.
And that was what I focused on early on, was trying to, you know, I put in the miles. Living in LA, I would drive to San Francisco for a 5-minute unpaid spot, and that's a 7-hour one-way drive if the traffic's not bad. And I would do that frequently. I would drive, you know, put in so many miles just to be in front of different audiences and see what works consistently. But now I want to get to that point where have a place to develop, have that room to grow, get in with a club, get in with something where that's your regular spot, hosting or whatever, because then you can kind of get a different feel. And that's kind of the next step. But everyone has their time and place and reasons, and you know, that's the coolest thing about comedy, is just the ever-changing amoeba, and there's no right way to do it.
Constantly
There's no
growing,
wrong way to
changing, and evolving based on how we're constantly changing and evolving as human beings, you know.
And there's literally no one way to do it. You can't say, well, that person's doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You can just say, well, that's not the way I would do it.
Yeah.
But
even then, it's like, well,
doesn't mean it's wrong.
Good on you.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of things I would have done that I know other people wouldn't do, and it doesn't mean I had to do things the way I did. It's just I chose to, you know. But it's something for everybody.
No, it's definitely, like, you know what though, because I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary of doing shows and performing, and I feel like there's a lot of good traits and character building moments in comedy that have helped me in life outside of comedy.
Just learn to trim the fat in everyday conversations.
Yeah, exactly.
You just say something that didn't need to be said. Like, okay, yeah, I could just got right to that point. And,
Yeah. And just the confidence that you get from a good show and a good set, you know, and it just goes to show that anything outside of comedy, if you just dedicate yourself to it enough and put in the time and work, that you'll get the benefit from it, you know. And that's why I say to people all the time, if you start comedy, the biggest thing is don't quit.
Well,
just don't quit, because time's going to pass regardless of what you choose to do. 10, 20 years later go by, you're like, oh, fuck. Imagine how good I would be if I never would have quit. 15 years in, I could be fucking touring the country right now.
Start and stay started. That's the only thing.
Yeah, just keep fucking going. Don't rob yourself of a potential future that will happen, because time passes regardless. You know, invest in yourself, and then one day you can cash out.
Yeah, I mean, that goes with anything that if you put your time in.
But comedy is so hard. Comedy, music.
It's such a weird. Comedy is different than anything else because you can't do it unless you're in front of an audience. You know, you can make a great. You can make a great song. You can make a great album. You can make a great movie, even, or you know, animation, all by yourself. You can be in your house and make a really good animation, a really good song, and then release it to the public, and everyone wants to hear it, and then you go on tour playing that. Comedy is the exact opposite. You come up with something, but you have to get in front of that audience to try it, and it's going to be rough the first couple times, and trying to nail that exact way that you did it to make it seem natural, to make it seem impromptu, because that's what made it funny was the fact it seemed off the top of your head. So now you have to add that element of acting. Now you have to add this element of memorization. Potentially the crowd has to be the same variables. So it has to, there's so much stuff that changes that really makes it that element of complexity that you don't get with music and you don't get with, and you know, it's not for everybody. And there's
also comedians that have the ability to feed off the crowd a little bit more than some other comics. So it's even more imperative that there's a crowd there, because it is an energy that goes back and forth that you need that duality to happen to make it a good show.
Yeah, I mean, I think any comic needs an audience. You know, trying to do your act by yourself, it just feels awkward.
Yeah, you can have no audience and crush it, but it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, if you're not a crowd work person, even you know, it's hard to gauge. You're just up there rehearsing.
Yeah.
You got to have at least a person or two.
Yeah, and be okay with going off script and improvising and riffing, you know, and taking that risk and seeing where it takes you. I love comedians that can do that, and I think you're one of those comedians that will just riff and you know, you're not afraid, and I love that. You know, there's some comedians that are the opposite. They stick to the script, and it's like okay to have that underlying structure and then stray from it, but the comedians that only stick to that structure and don't ever stray, like, that's cool, but at the same time, I would rather see a comedian stray a little bit sometimes, you know, and take risks and, you know, riff off the top of their head if they want to, or maybe even work with the crowd if that's, you know, their thing. Didn't plan on it, but, you know, a crowd member engages you and you engage them back. There's a lot of natural, organic humor that can be drawn out of those situations. And
there can be, but then there's the people like George Carlin that never humored that kind of stuff.
Well, because he's just so like,
but again,
go.
So, you know, if you want to make a line of like, that's what makes a good comedian is being able to riff and go off the top of your head. Does that take away from Carlin then? Does that make Carlin less of a comedian?
No, not at all.
But so in that sense,
I'm just saying when I see a comedian, I like to see comedians that take risks.
Sure.
But when I see Carlin do his thing, I know that it takes a tremendous amount of work and preparation to make those. He's a word wizard.
Yeah.
So to make that happen, so I wouldn't then see that and be like, oh, you should take some risks, Carlin. You know, like, no, he's already crushing it in his own right.
Right. So a younger Carlin that you don't know is Carlin yet, preparing to be the Carlin that we know that stays to the script and goes nuts. Like now you're looking at a newer comic that isn't taking risks and isn't doing that. Do you encourage them to do that, or do you say, hey man, maybe take some risks?
No, if they're crushing it, then they're crushing it.
What if they're not, because they're still trying to figure that you know?
Well, you know, I'd rather if someone's sticking to the script and the script isn't working, then yes, I would like to see them go off script and see if that works.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to say you're wrong or right for doing it or not doing it. As a viewer of comedy, that's what I would like to see.
Yeah.
You know? I've seen it work out really well for comedians.
Sure. Yeah. There's people that like Carlin that will freak out though. And if a comic is like, I want to see this, and they didn't know that Carlin's not a go off the script kind of guy, and they're like, I want to see what he does with this, they're just gonna get screamed at. You know, it's like that goes back to that genre, is you don't necessarily know what you're getting or what genre you're trying to fit into.
Yeah.
You know, so you watch someone and someone's like, I want to see you be more high energy. So, well, that's not the genre I'm going for.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not, you know, yeah, it could be more high energy,
Yeah.
but I want to see, you know, this and that. It's a very interesting. That's where it, you know.
Well, not just that, but too, like if people get used to you being a certain way. Like I remember one time, you know, I'm pretty active on stage. You know, I like to get my physical energy out there. You know, I react, I move around, I bounce around. Not a whole lot, but I move around. I have a certain energy, and I remember one day I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna stand there, and I'm just gonna focus on doing some 1 or 2 line jokes, you know, and kind of slow the energy down a little bit, you know. And I did it, and I thought I did well, but then all these people came up to me after, like, what were you doing? I'm like, I was just trying something new. And they're like, that's not you. Because they just got so used to me being a certain way that if I wanted to try something else, everyone was like, what the fuck is he doing, you know? And that kind of threw me off a little bit, because I would think that, you know, whatever, if someone wants to change their style or try something new, then fucking whatever, you know? But
I would still say that's fine. And
yeah, for sure.
The fact that people would call you on it is kind of, I mean, it is yeah, if you see something different, but
it just kind of threw me off a little bit by how no one was like, oh, I like that better. And it was like, no, what are you doing? Go back to what you did before. That's what made you funny. Like, oh shit, thanks.
Yeah.
I guess that's a compliment.
Yeah, I don't know. And I still have the mentality of under the first 10 years. I mean, everyone says it takes 10 years to get good, kind of a thing. And like, that's what I was told when I first started and all that. That's just a thing people say, But we don't know our voice. We don't know any of that kind of stuff. We don't know what's going to work and what is our style. And
that's the biggest struggle, is finding your own voice.
Yeah, and not necessarily having other people influence that to a degree.
Yeah. I think there's some comics that just never truly find their own voice, which is unfortunate. But I think it just happens sometimes, where you can't fully say like, oh, this is no longer an act. This is me. This is who I am. This is my voice. I've found it. Hallelujah. There's, I think, a lot of comics that never get to that point, which is unfortunate. Because it's like, how do you know? How do you know when you found your voice?
Yeah, and it's also it's kind of hard to find that when you don't have the consistency of like when you're growing up in front of like a volatile room one night, and the next night is a room people are listening and they're really polite, and the next is. But if you finally get to that point where now you're in clubs and the clubs have a more consistent energy, and the crowds are more consistent. Now you don't have to deal with this tourist versus this. You don't have to deal with the game being on and all those things. That's the level you get past that out of that open micer. And that's when you can really start finding your voice and finding when you have your regular crowd. Mm-hmm. But I think too many people try to find that too soon. They try to be that Carlin, that Chappelle too soon. They try to be too rigid of this is my style, this is my whatever, and I think they lock themselves into something early on instead of getting out of their scene, getting out of their comfort zone, getting to a place to see what works, to see, can I make this joke work in all these environments and all these things like.
It definitely helps having that experience of a room full of 15 people that are rowdy and not paying attention versus a room full of 300 people, or maybe even 500 people that are there and having,
those rowdy rooms make those other rooms so much
gives
better.
Gives you proper perspective too. It's like, sometimes you need those smaller rooms to really appreciate when you do go to the club and get a good crowd.
Yeah, you have to have those.
But I think that it just, each comic that has those in them, it just gives them that much more experience and that much more range to work with. I don't think it's good to be either in just the bars or just the clubs.
Of course not.
Like you said, it's good to be able to spread out and do all different kinds of shit.
Well, no, but also getting out of certain towns and different regions and see if this works in this area and where these people and I did my Jesus hands joke. I did that in Dothan, Alabama, where on the way to the gig, the whole way was Jesus 2020 signs. Not Trump, not Biden. It was Jesus 2020. And I still did that joke, and I was like, I know where I am. And then they loosened up and laughed because they're like, oh, you get,
Good job. Okay, cool.
But yeah, I don't agree with like pandering to an audience or like comedy's such an ever-changing amoeba.
Yeah.
There's no one way about it, especially when you don't have that household name yet, and we're all still learning and trying to figure things out. And you got to figure out a whole new way of talking to people. It's not guys like Chappelle that make it seem like they're just getting up there and be so conversational. It's like that takes so much effort and energy to get to that point. And there's some people that can come in and be really natural with that up front, but and there's some people that pick up a paintbrush and just do amazing things too. That doesn't mean it's everyone, and people that think that that's what comedy is, and they go to a show and they're like, I want to yell at the comic and have him make fun of me. That's what comedy is. Like, not all the time, but sometimes, sometimes it is. It's you'll never know the.
I think 10 years is something to be proud of for sure, and I think that when I work with a lot of comics, if they tell me they have 10 plus years, then I'm instantly more interested in that than watching their video.
Sure.
Because I think if you're actually grinding and you're going from club to bar and you're touring, you're getting out of the region, and you say you've been doing it for 10 years, even if you weren't doing it for the whole 10 years, but like a good 2 years here and a good year here, dude, you're gonna be just fine in comedy. People are gonna be able to go up there and have a good time, if you're in for 10 years. And now I think that's why, like you said, 10 years just to get like okay. It's not even like great. It's not even to get great. It's just to get okay. And I think that's such a cool accomplishment, because that's where I feel like you start seeing certain things in a very positive mindset for your future, you know, because I think 10 years in you can either say, oh, okay, maybe this didn't go down the way I wanted it to, or damn, I'm excited about the next 10 years, you know. And I think that you have a definite bright future with what you told me about what you want to do in the next 10 years. And I think that fucking just having that mindset, that's how you make that shit happen. Just put it out there, like you said, put it the ether out there, put that shit out in the universe, man. That shit's real. It fucking happens when you do that.
It is wild what the last 10 years has brought, and just makes you go like, well, then what's possible for the next 10?
Mm-hmm.
It's the next, you know, you never know what tomorrow can bring and stuff. But yeah, since making the decision to go on stage, the wildest of things. I've met most of my childhood, you know, heroes I looked up to. All those, like, you break the fourth wall and stuff, and you realize people are just people, and we're not able to do this. You know, it's an all belief thing, and there's, you know, especially when you start becoming an adult, and now you're bigger than the people you looked up to as a kid. You're like, wait a minute. Yeah. And I thought that person was larger than life. Yeah. Well, then I would look larger than life on TV to someone else. Yeah. All right, okay. I see the perspective now. They're no different or better than us or me or you or anybody.
We're all on the same rock floating around, you know. Distance is merely just an illusion, you know. But, yeah, I think it's definitely good to have something to look forward to. And pending any fucking huge natural disasters or pandemics, you know. Fucking hopefully we don't have to deal with that shit anymore, but there's so many people want to be entertained, and that's the beauty of it. And that does fluctuate as well, as far as like turnout, people's interest in shows, people's willingness to go out and stuff like that. But
I mean, comedy is the last true form of free speech too, and it's like the original form of entertainment, just sitting around a campfire listening to someone tell a cool story. And you don't need any, you know, material or any equipment really to do it if they can hear you. Most of you start needing the microphones and stuff, but yeah, it's always going to be necessary and just helping take people's worry away and
just put that positive vibes and energy out in the universe. Let people forget about their problems for a couple hours. You know, it's a beautiful thing, especially when you can start making money doing comedy. There's no better pay. I mean, there's no better reward for what you do. I'm not saying the pay is great, but
I mean, you know, to make a decent
if you can
living and
someone gives you $10 to make someone laugh, that is like the coolest fucking thing ever. Whether it's 10, 100,000, doesn't matter. Because making people laugh is truly one of the coolest things you could do. And imagine what you'd be doing if you weren't doing comedy right now. Probably wouldn't be nearly as adventurous, nearly as fun. You know.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about it is like, I mean, yeah, before I started comedy, I was like living out here, working just retail jobs and stuff, and comedy opens up so many doors and so many adventures, and I've seen the entire country because of it, and just made it on TV, all kinds of little things where like just you wouldn't think like what's possible, and all just from taking a step towards one thing, being so broke you can't afford an open mic.
No. It's like it doesn't cost anything. Yes, it does. It costs gas, it costs time, and then you get up there just to get bumped or whatever it is. But God, it's such a grind, but it's a beautiful fucking grind if you can survive it.
I mean, I just wonder where I'd have been if I had $5 that day, though. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, how much longer would it have taken me to sign up?
Probably not.
What I would have done, I mean, I might.
I think your reason that you gave of seeing people do it and you think to yourself, I could do this, I think that you were already in comedy at that point in time.
Yeah, it was just the procrastination element of writing. And when I thought I was writing a 3-minute act, I didn't know, you know. My first thing I wrote, I was writing it so verbatim to what I thought I was going to say, to even the riffs with the people in the backing and stuff. And like, I thought, I didn't know. And then when I finally went up,
3 minutes is like,
I gave it 4.5, and I didn't run the light. I know for a fact I didn't run the light because the Comedy Underground plays the music. And when they lit me, I knew in the video, like, I went without, and I had 4.5 minutes, so I just kept going. Because I just had a list of, like, words on the paper that would remind me of a topic. And some of those I still say today. There's some jokes from that very first time on stage, I still say it today, in a different,
Oh yeah,
little different ways. Some are still pretty close. They were good enough then, and it's like, well, they're good enough now then too. But that was the idea of like getting something physical copy out there and like doing the new autobiographical part of comedy, and then get to the philosophical. This is what I think for the world kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm excited about what you could potentially do with that recording we did last night at Dog Days. I think it turned out pretty good. Hopefully the people that support you and want to see more of you but necessarily can't might be able to get their hands on that, because I think that'll be a good thing to share with people that support you, for sure. So, and it's good to get a recording on file, you know? Like there's shit I recorded 5 years ago where I'm like, damn, I'm glad I recorded that. And at the time I didn't even think anything of it, you know? But
Yeah.
those things can start like working to your advantage later down the road, for sure.
Oh, I've already remembered a couple of the jokes I forgot last night.
Of course, that's how it always goes, man. That's
Some
how
of
it
my
always
staples
goes.
I wanted on there was, oh well, but you know.
That
next
always
time.
happens. And you know, I remember I used to kick myself so much for forgetting a joke that I wanted to do. And then I realized, you know, Susan Jones helped me realize this, especially after talking to her about it and seeing her perform at multiple places in a row that week, you know, and being able to see the differences between her sets at each venue. And just know that sometimes that happens. Sometimes you just go up there and you forget shit, but you can't really kick yourself.
That's true for your average set. For last night,
Yeah, it's a little different if
was
you're doing a
supposed to be
recording.
all of my stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and yes, if you're going up
Yeah.
and show to show and the audience doesn't know what you forgot, yes.
Yeah.
But in this, it was like I want to get everything out there and be done, you know.
But that's even where having the recording comes into hand, because now the next time you do a long set, I think it'll be just that much easier.
This just goes to show like how the recording should actually be done. A 2-night, you know, you have 2 identical shows, not
That would be ideal.
not a 15, you know, a 10-minute open mic, a 25-minute rough bar, and then a one shot. Let's see what you remember for an hour. If you can do that, you know. Had tonight been another hour, I'd be like, okay, now I know what I did. Now tonight will probably be the official recording, but it just ends up like, you know, like they're doing a recording in Seattle last night and tonight for somebody, and it's a 2-night.
Mm-hmm.
Choose the best, edit some things in. It's, you know, not just one take, you know, and that's what most specials are, or most recordings. It's like this joke from the early set, this joke from the late set, because they laughed harder. This joke from this. So last night was a little less prepared and a little less, you know.
Well,
But also,
yeah.
also in terms of where I'm coming from, what I've done recently, and it's just like, you know, I wasn't. If I was on the road like the year before, I'd have been a lot more polished with it, and you know. But I've had a lot of time down, and
It'd be interesting to see how much they're paying for the special to have that done.
yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what that would be, what that number would look like. At the end of the day, after all the editing and shit like that, you know, it'd be cool to see. Because I have no idea what the value is of it, because I'm still so new to it, you know. But I know there's pretty good value to it, because I have been getting paid to edit people's sets, like just going back and forth between 2 cameras, and people are just fucking
Yeah,
stoked.
It's a great video to have that, and
Yeah.
people love that kind of thing. You're actually putting work in, as opposed to just hitting record on a thing. And
And sometimes I feel like I can make more money editing than comedy, honestly.
you probably can. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's a value people want.
Just
Like I
keep
said,
grinding away at it for a couple more years.
you're doing more than just hitting record on a thing. You're actually giving people content that's captivating, because the cuts and stuff make it seem more official, and that's one thing I don't have yet. In 10 years, I don't have a video where it's different angles of me on stage. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's taken 10 years to, you know, even have someone having multiple cameras on a thing. So
Yeah. No, I think it turned out pretty good, and I can't wait for you to see it. So, and I think you did great. So, yeah. And I definitely think that, like I said, the next time you perform an hour, it's going to be just that much easier, you know, which is pretty fucking cool.
Well, yes, but you're also. I mean, and not to take away from that, but in 2020 to 2021, I did 90-hour-long set. Like I've done, you know, I am very confident,
dude,
consistent. But the gap between my last one and this one, so yeah, the next
Yeah,
one.
so I'm saying I go 2 weeks without telling a joke. I start forgetting the shit, you know. So
It will be better, but I also I really want to put all this stuff behind and not keep working on it. So I don't know how much of it I'll keep going forward. or maybe I'll keep all of it. Maybe my idea of what I was gonna do of trying new stuff. Maybe I'll just be so lazy that I'll still be telling the Coolio joke 5 months from now.
But I don't know if it's laziness. I think that you just got enough. You'll have enough fresh crowds and ears and eyes in the next few years that you'll have the freedom to do whatever you want. Old stuff, new stuff.
That's what makes it, and that's what makes it tricky, is when you don't have new crowds every time. It's like, well, they haven't heard this joke. They haven't heard this joke. They haven't heard this. So then you just keep doing the same jokes as new crowds. It's like being in that stable place, which is the same audience. Like, now I have to have new jokes. Because when I go to different areas, I'm looking at them like, hey, these guys don't know me. So I'll do these jokes I know work, and then But that's why I want to have an official recording. So that's why it's like, you don't know me, and I did a bunch of stuff that doesn't work, but here's my album of stuff that did work. So buy this and come see my next show. So yeah, it's might be able to figure something out in Denver and get an actual club recording out there as well or something. But
yeah, it's all about the audio. You see there's videos that people post themselves at the club, but they're doing it from a phone.
Oh, yeah.
And
the
they're
phone's
recording
behind the audience,
and that's like so crucial. And
that's how most of my videos are or were, is my cell phone in the back of the room, and you can hear me on it because the mic is there, the amplified, but the crowd is in front of everything, and it doesn't hit the way that it hits you on stage.
Yeah.
Like,
it's so different recording straight from the microphone and the room separately.
Yeah,
it just makes whatever you're doing sound like as the viewer who pulls it up, they're 100 times more likely to listen to the whole thing if it sounds good right out the gate. Sure. But if you pull up the video and it's just a room recording and you get that like echo and that vibration in the room, it's like distorting the microphone from the phone. You lose people super easy, and that's why I bought that recording device, because I was like, this is a must. I'll never forget, someone told me, you can get away with shitty video and good audio, but you can't get away with shitty audio and good video. If it's shitty audio and good video, no one's gonna watch that shit. But if it's good audio, shitty video, you can get away with it. And it's crazy to think about, but it's 100% true. So, and audio engineers that do that shit for a living, dude, I couldn't imagine going down that wormhole of constantly looking for that like perfection. Because it's so hard to get like crisp, clear audio, whether it be music, comedy, poetry, whatever it is. I don't know if you ever listen to KEXP, the Seattle studio, but they do an excellent job of really honing in that audio, like recording, whether it be live performances by musicians that come out or just recording on site somewhere. It's really impressive shit. I've learned a lot just from watching them and kind of having them as a baseline to what the audio should sound like. And it's good to have something like KEXP out there kind of setting the bar. I'm hoping one day they have comedians at their studio. I think that'd be pretty cool. Did you ever see the KEXP videos on YouTube at all by chance? No. It's worth checking out for sure.
Yeah.
Like the recordings, the camera angles, all that shit. It's like, it's thousands and thousands of dollars worth of gear, but you can definitely tell the difference in what good gear looks like.
Yeah, professional quality and content is definitely important.
But it's definitely something to work towards too. It's like, just like in comedy, just work towards that, perfecting that craft, going down that wormhole. So in the last 10 years, what do you think has been one of the biggest highlights for you in comedy?
Doing that tour was pretty dope. People say I headlined a nationwide tour was cool, even though it was just breweries and wineries. But
I remember following along on that. That was pretty cool to see during COVID.
Yeah. Some people have different opinions about it and stuff, and now we're getting further away, so people's opinions are changing and becoming looser. But at the time they might have been more upset than currently. I don't know. But performing at the Comedy Store, I think, is probably one of the highlights. To be on the stage with people I looked up to before I started. To be on a show, like, it's not to some degrees of other people we know, but to be on a show with, pretty big names.
Pretty prestigious place,
is cool. But the next step would be officially opening for people instead of just guest, but to be able to go on the road with a headliner is the next 10-year goal that I would like to do, and just really learn the craft from that way. But yeah, I mean, when I first started comedy and moved to LA and stuff, I didn't have. I had a checklist of things I wanted to do, but they were all very loose. I could have made my dreams bigger, but what I said I wanted to do, I did. And that was being a regular on a TV show, even though it was just being a background actor, but I was a regular on a couple different ones that they brought me back for different seasons. Being seen in a movie, a major motion picture, I got that happened. Being on stage with guys like Rogan and stuff, like just checking off all those little things, was all stuff I wanted to do in my first 10 years. And like, I don't think there's one thing that I had in that bucket list of that first 10 years I didn't do to some small degree.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Be able to do that.
But at the same time, people in LA and the people I know that have done bigger things, they will shit on those little things. Don't talk about being a background actor. Don't talk about this. That wasn't you working with so and so. You can't say this. That sends the wrong impression. And I'm like, yes and no, but I still do it mostly as a goof, because it is kind of funny to me that just a small town kid that only started comedy because he couldn't afford $5 to get into it has now crusted into this area where I'm welcome at the one of the biggest comedy clubs in the world, and and one of the wildest things to me is I can be anywhere for a given length of time, and I will know one of the headliners that comes through the comedy clubs, and they know me well enough. Like, I've gotten guest spots from Jimmy Schubert, from Ahmed at the Comedy Works, like to perform at Denver Comedy Works because a comic I knew from LA was able to vouch for me and get me on that stage. To be in a town I am not from, that's Denver, and reach out to a headliner and they go, yes, you're qualified to be on our show. That's one of my biggest highlights in the first 10 years, to be just kind of in that pocket of.
And there's a lot of people that are 10 years in comedy and haven't had those kind of opportunities,
Yeah.
So the fact that you're putting yourself out there and taking advantage of those opportunities, that's where it's at. That's where it's at in comedy. That's how you make a living for yourself, Keep grinding away and throwing yourself out there and not being afraid to do that.
Yeah, that was where the living in the car in LA came from, because I lived 2 years in my Chevy Cruze in LA, and I did it so I would be at the footstep of the Comedy Store. So I'd be there, front and center, or in the back hanging out where people, they recognize me, they know me. But that also probably hindered some of my growth as well, because there was that chunk where I wasn't in a local scene like this, around friends and around community workshopping stuff and working together. I was in the pit of the beast, just trying to hang out. So there's probably a large chunk of that developmental stuff that happens for some people in that first 10 years that didn't happen for me. That's why I'm still, there's that element of like when you're just hanging around.
Yeah, it's more of a solo career feel.
Yeah, but it's like that networking and stuff that maybe isn't beneficial to a lot of things. There could have been a lot of detrimental stuff I did by choosing the path I chose. Now I'm seen as just the hangout guy or the guy that's in the back smoking. So a little uphill battle from that as well, but I still chalk it up to being a pretty big success in the last 10 years.
You made it. You made it. Woo! Now it's time for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Hopefully this will be where I get my action figure made.
That'd be sick. All right, you got any shout outs you want to give before we wrap it up?
Shout out to Walt Disney. Keep cool. Peace out to the Queen. Sorry about what happened to you. Meant to have you on my podcast and just didn't get to it. So, I guess Uncle Dave's Diner.
Yeah, that shit was good. That was really good, especially for the price.
Man.
Uncle Dave's in Port Orchard. Check him out.
Yeah.
So cool. Well,
thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thanks for coming out and putting on some good shows, and I look forward to seeing what the future holds for you. And glad that we can both kind of like celebrate our 10-year very close to each other. And
two totally different paths, but also like you're building a scene out here where everyone knows and loves you, and you're able to provide stuff for people, and I've just gone up the solo track where I'm like,
but that's
"He's
how
gotta
life
get some
is.
credits,
You
no
just
people want to see me. Oh,
and then 20 years, our 20-year thing, we'll probably get back together, do some more shows, talk about that. As long as we're both fucking still kicking.
See you in 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. All right, have a good day. We'll wrap it up.